Secodas Housing Europe is the European Social Housing Federation. So our members are national or regional housing federations, and we coordinate a big European project called Nearly Zero Energy Challenge, where we are supposed to produce recommendations for policymakers to adopt the right level of requirement for refurbishment and new buildings. So with this project, we want to make sure that the implementation of the Energy Performance of Building Directive will serve the interest of the tenants and housing providers on the ground by adopting the right level, meaning a level of energy requirement which is not beyond the capacity of housing providers and low-income families, but also a level which is in line with the energy and climate objectives of the European Union. We are in Wiesbaden, Germany, to discuss the cost optimality of the refurbishment of dwellings as part of our project Nearly Zero Energy Challenge. But we want to come to some conclusion about what is feasible from the point of view of housing providers. What are the adequate and optimal ratio between energy savings on the one hand and investment costs on the other hand? Because for all the talk about nearly zero energy buildings, passive house standards, there's a reality which is the level of affordability of the low-income families and also the capacity of housing providers to do it. So we are discussing here to find some common methodology to compare the different type of buildings and to come to a conclusion what type of buildings is the most appropriate to ensure that we're not going too far into the requirement for energy and for housing providers.
I think it's important to look at the specific situation in each member state. So on the one hand, the technology we find in the countries is different at the very moment. So the building stock is very heterogeneous among Europe. So a building in Italy, for example, is quite different from a building in Sweden, obviously. So the technology we find there is different. The climatic conditions we find, they are different. And also the tradition and policy instruments, they are different. There are different stakeholders in the countries. So for example, in Germany, we have a large stock of rental buildings, whereas in southern countries, we have a large share of owner-occupied buildings. And so the policies to foster the transition to nearly zero energy building must really reflect those differences. So we must have policies which address the different barriers for the different target groups correctly, to really foster the implementation. Otherwise, we will have a problem. So one policy for whole Europe will not work because that does not address the specific barriers of the countries and the specific barriers of the different people.
Passive house standard is very ambitious. This is clear, and we are aware that this will be not the first project for everybody. But we think that any company should just try some pilot projects to get the knowledge and to check for the chances what they are. For a medium time scale, we think maybe we will not reach a pure passive house standard, not for renovation as well, so we have some relaxed standard defined for that anyway. But in a medium time scale, we will get there on different paths, maybe, but we think it's a reasonable goal. From a technical point of view, I think the solutions are there. We are working with the manufacturers to get production costs lower. For the beginning, they are the small and medium enterprises, clearly. They are more flexible to make decisions. A carpenter doing wooden construction, it's a question of half a year to design a new box of components for his house. Yeah? But then he can have an optimized passive house toolbox. Yeah? We are working with those people. Well, we give advice to them what to change in their actual products for the windows, for the ventilation system and so on. And we think we are quite successful with that. because these companies are really willing to change things in that direction.
I was struck by one of the projects briefly presented from the Passive House Institute in Germany, where this showed that they managed to reduce average energy consumption by 95%, which is quite crazy in a way. But they managed to do it, well, by investing quite a lot, more than 1,000 euro per square meter, which includes everything, not only the energy refurbishment, but all the rest. I mean, a new bathroom and new ventilation and heating systems. So it's quite a lot of investment, but at the end, to have this idea that the people who were living there from almost 1 year to another, the energy bill will be drastically reduced. It's quite striking, and I think we want to achieve this kind of results for the affordable housing sector in a reasonable way. If possible, let's say deep renovation, but if not, and indeed usually it's not possible to displace people from one building to another, we need to do step by step.
This is an area with flats where 850 flats, I think, from the colleagues of the GWW had a little problem because of the static. We have a little hill and the houses were going down. The decision was refurbishment would be not the right way in this area. So they lay the houses down, as you see there, and build new houses in here. The target is to build more new flats than the old flats that were laid down. And they tried to compare different standards of energy in the new flats.
We have the opportunity here to see the comparison of different building standards. We have here passive houses and houses with low energy standard, and it will be interesting to see not only the differences in construction costs, but also the feedback from the residents, and also to have the real data from real projects and to compare these different building standards.
The question would be, where is the right point? And that would be cleared here in these new houses where we can compare exact in real life which house needs more energy, the house of the NF or this one who is built much better than NF.
When we see the old buildings from the 1950s that are still, some of them over there, you can see that obviously it's a higher comfort and a higher quality of not only the buildings and the energy efficiency, but also the whole area and the space outside the buildings.
Now we are in a passive house. The windows, they are a bit thicker. You have the 3 glasses, one after each other. Plastic floor, even if it looks like wood, which is much better to use for rental flats. Over the door, you can see this thing is where the air is coming in for the heating, or for the reused air. Which is taken out of the flat in the bathroom and the kitchen. It is put up to the roof, and the warmth of the old air is getting out and transferred into the new air, which comes from outside. So you have a loss of energy of only 5%. The fresh air comes to be warmed into the flat again. You can control your room climate and the strength of the air which is provided, and the heating with this. You have the heating in the floor. You can see the metering of cold and warm water, which is a standard in Germany. It is in every flat. The person who rents the flat can see how much he has used already on water and which he has to pay it directly to the provider. We are just around to lay down this block because the people live here still in other flats, and we always need an amount of flats for the people to switch over. So the people who lived there, they are now here in the new blocks. They moved over, and that will be again with the next ones. So we have to finish those before we can lay down the next blocks.
The orange building, it's a provisional building. It's built for 10-15 years, and it's to our people who rent the building. They can inform about the new flats we build, and it's also for the people we sell new apartments. They can choose floor, other things for their flat.